Hello and welcome once again to the ILC's YouTube channel. Today we're going to take a look at one of the easiest ways to integrate quotes into your writing. We call this method the quote sandwich, and it's very useful when you need to use someone else's words to provide evidence for one of your arguments. Just like its namesake, a quote sandwich has three main parts: an upper piece of bread, a center, the meat and cheese of the sandwich, and a lower piece of bread. In this case, the upper bread consists of the introduction, in which you give the author's name, the source title, and the context surrounding the quote. The center is the signal phrase, which makes it clear that you are no longer using your own words, along with the quote itself, and the lower bread is your explanation of that quote. Again, the upper bread consists of the introduction. This is a sentence or two which gives the author's name, the title of the source, as well as what type of source it is, article, book, website, etc., and a brief description of the quote's original context. You want the reader to immediately know what your quote is talking about, so it needs a proper introduction. The first part of the center of the sandwich is the signal phrase. This consists of a pronoun to represent the author and a reporting verb. Reporting verbs signal a change in voice, from your words to those of your source. For example, something like, "he writes," or "Robin Lakoff writes." Words like writes, states, argues, claims, reports, or indicates are all good choices for reporting verbs, but you should choose one based on the context of the quote. These should always be in present tense. Whenever you're writing about something written, it is referred to in what we call the literary present. It's also important to make sure that these flow naturally into the quote. For example, Professor Smith argues quote sandwiches were the best method of providing evidence. The next part of the center is the quote itself. Remember that you must use the author's exact words, though there are two exceptions, which we'll cover later. The quote shouldn't be longer than 4 lines, and you should always include a parenthetical citation. The only exceptions to this are online articles, which will not have page numbers. Here's an example. Civilians back home also need to believe that what their country is doing is just and necessary, on page 97. That first example was in MLA format. Remember that in APA, your parenthetical citation will display the year the work was initially published. The citation will also appear after the author is introduced, not at the end of the sentence. Here's that same example again in APA. Robin Lakoff, 2004, writes, "Civilians back home also need to believe that what their country is doing is just and necessary." The lower bread of the sandwich is your explanation of the quote. You need to do 2 things: show how the author's words relate to the topic sentence of your paragraph, and show how this quote illustrates or provides evidence for your claim. These don't necessarily need to be separate sentences. If your quote is clearly related to your topic, you can achieve both in one. Here's an example. As a result, the media uses particular types of language to justify warfare in order to ensure the support of the population. Here's the whole sandwich put together. In his article, "The Power of Words in Wartime," Robin Lakoff discusses the use of propaganda in war. He writes, "Civilians back at home also need to believe that what their country is doing is just and necessary," 97. As a result, the media uses particular types of language to justify warfare in order to secure the support of the population. So that's a quote sandwich, but before we go, there are a few special rules for quotes which you should be aware of. In some cases, you can change words within a quote, but only when clarifying something that is necessary to understand the quote. For example, if you need to change a pronoun to the noun it represents, any changes made should appear in brackets so that the reader understands that it is not part of the original. Also, if you need to skip part of a sentence or section, you can use ellipses to show that something has been omitted. You should do this only when it doesn't affect the author's intended meaning. Here's an example of using brackets. Notice how the pronoun its in the first sentence has been changed to enemies in the second. This is the noun that it originally stood for. This makes the meaning of the sentence clear when removed from the context of the paragraph in which it originally appeared. The word enemies, non-specificity, also has a fear-inducing connotation. Lakoff, page 97. Now here's an example of ellipses. Notice how we skipped the appositive and those who remain at home, but preserve the original meaning in a shorter, more succinct form. Soldiers learn to call their enemies by names that make them seem not quite human. Lakoff, page 96. All the quotes we used in this video come from Robin Tolmick Lakoff's article, The Power of Words in Wartime. Thanks for watching. We hope this video was useful and that you have an excellent semester here at Wake Tech.